Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the UK BIM Alliance Virtual Conference. We are now into just to introduce myself, I'm Craig Hardingham. I'm a member of the UK BIM Alliance Communities Leadership Team and also chair of UK BIM Alliance East region. We're now into the designers and contractors section of the conference, where Fabio Roberti of Wilkinson Eyre will be talking to us about an architect's approach to clients' requests for BIM. So Fabio, over to you.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. So let's start. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for attending my session. I will talk about the Wilkinson Eyre approach to client.
Fabio, we can't hear you.
No, hello? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I can hear you as well. Yeah, carry on.
Okay, perfect. Very good. So I just start again. Hello everyone. Thank you for attending my session. I will talk about the Wilkinson Eyre approach to clients' requests for BIM. It's a very interesting subject because we can identify areas for improvement in the BIM adoption. So, okay, my name is Fabio Roberti. I'm the head of BIM in Wilkinson Eyre. I lead the technology and process for BIM, which are based in the ISO 19650. And here you can see my contact details if you want to contact me after the presentation. Wilkinson Eyre is one of the leading architectural practices, and these are three of our projects: Battersea Power Station, Gateshead Millennium Bridge, and Gardens by the Bay in Singapore. The agenda for this presentation: I'll talk about the BIM project requirements and typical issues, the EIR and BP overview. It's good to have a quick overview. I will talk about also the client engagement process, tender and project award, the process for projects without BIM requirements, which is a common issue, and also be talking about the BIM implementation strategy and the asset information strategy and typical issues. Well, it's very important to have a clear project requirements so we can plan the strategy to deliver the project. In this example, let's say you want to go from A to B to a new destination. You need to provide information, right, which normally is a structured data. So then you need to provide here in what? So it will be a postcode, a street name, or a place. So this is the what you need. And you need to select how you are going to get to your destination. So you are going to use a car, a bus, tube, and it would be very nice to have a mobile app where you can select I want BIM via UK BIM framework. So just click it and then it's done, or appears the spec. So it's not the case yet, but so the key point is to have clear project requirements. And the problem appears when we don't have the clear information to deliver the project. So if you don't have the correct information, you may get to the wrong place if you're not using a GPS or with the wrong information. So if you want to go to your next destination, A to B, it potentially will cost more, and you take longer for you to get to your destination if you don't have the right information. So now I'm going to ask you, can you remember any project that you have worked with these issues? So then you don't have the information, it takes longer, and it costs more. So this could be a common issue we can discuss later. So with projects, it's exactly the same. We need clear project requirements to plan ahead. Do you agree? You can speak on the Q&A session about it. So here we have the expected information, which is the what we need to deliver, right? So these are the key BIM documents that has been mentioned in the previous presentation. So which includes the organizational information requirements, which provides the data information to achieve the organizational objectives, the EIR, the exchange information requirements, and the asset information requirements, the AIR. So this is the typical information on the tender process, and of course repeats because we need the same document in the after the project award, which is the same set of documentation. So, and speaking with my colleagues in the industry, it's clear that many projects are not receiving this information, or when companies are receiving it, this information doesn't reflect the real client needs. So then this becomes a problem, and it's very important to address this issue and try to improve. So, and then if you don't have the right information, it becomes a problem, right, to get to our destination. These are the reality for information received in the AEC industry for many projects. So speaking for the colleagues, so then this is what we can see in the industry. So for some projects in the tender process, there is only BIM Level 2 as a requirement. And if you ask 10 people to define BIM Level 2, you'll get 10 different responses. So, and it's good to complement that, by the way, the ISO 19650 does not use the term BIM Level 2. The project is still using BIM Level 2, and that appears in the industry, but the ISO refers to BIM according to the ISO 19650 and also the UKBIMA framework. So the other issue, which is very common, is about the COBie deliverables without as information. So sometimes we find just they need a COBie delivery or they need asset information, but doesn't define it clear. So, and then in the project award, the common issue is to find the incomplete EIR that doesn't represent the real client needs. It's here. And many companies, when they receive the asset information requirements, the AIR, it is unrealistic and over spec. So it doesn't represent the real client needs. So then it's not to every project, but for some projects still appearing, and you can find this very common place in our industry. Now let's talk about the key points to improve the project requirements. The information at the right time is a critical factor for success. Strategic planning for each RIB stage. My advice is to start planning with the asset information requirements and then work out the other stages. Clients to better understand their needs and capability. If you request COBie, can you manage this data in the correct way? So, and the clients also needs to check the BIM documentation if it is realistic for their needs. Sometimes the BIM documentation are asking more than what exactly they need, so they need to understand what's requested. And also we need to identify properly how the FEM information will be managed. If the client asset asks for asset information, it's important to identify how this will be managed and which platform is going to be used. Also identify the security and health safety requirements, and better understand the information manager function, which is defined in the ISO as well, ISO 19650, and define the tasks clear. So the common problem here is some of it, the information manager function are assigned to design teams. So people need to understand the function and define it clear. So now let's check the issues when we have poor information. It's the same problem we are going to have if you don't have the correct address to get to our destination. So it's going to appear the delay to define the project deliverables. It's going to be defined in later stages, which creates problems. No clear strategy to manage data across all web stages. The CDE is another issue that normally is for many projects available in the construction stage, not in early stages. Clients may request information that will not be used. BIM documentation from templates and not specific for the project that should reflect the client's needs. So the BIM documentation needs to really reflect what the client needs, not from templates. Also, it's very important to have how we're going to plan the FM data. And it's quite common as well to over request COBie deliverables without the real needs. So there are many companies producing data that in the end is not being used. And in the same way, clients without a clear process to check the received data, because the architecture engineering companies are providing multiple data, so all this information needs to be checked. And also the information manager tasks is sometimes assigned to the design team, which needs to be clarified. So then the key point here is poor information leads to all these issues that will be great to address before starting the project. And here, just to show again, so now we're going to have a quick overview about the EIR and the BIM execution plan, but these are the 4 key documents. There are others, but these are the main key documents. Now let's have a quick overview about the EIR. So the EIR defines what the employer wants to get out from the BIM models at each stage. The EIR is divided between the technical, management, and the commercial areas. So in technical, we have the information about software, data exchange, level of information needed. In management, is about the standards, roles and responsibilities, and the collaboration. And there are a few others as well, we can see here. And in commercial, is about the process to define the project deliverables and define the information purpose. So this is a quick overview about the EIR, what needs to be inside. So, and now let's have a quick overview about the BP, which is one of the key points. The BP is divided in management, planning, standards, and the IT solution. So these are the 4 key areas in the BP. And in our process for tender, we create the pre-BP, and the aim is to demonstrate and propose the approach and capability to meet the EIR. Once the project is awarded, we create the post-BP. Then we have to confirm the project requirements to match the EIR, agree targets for deliverables and data exchange. So there is this 2 documentation. We prepare the pre and post BP. And here is a quick overview about a typical BIM execution plan. Now let's talk about the client engagement. In my view, the client engagement helps to convert strategic goals to realistic deliverables. This is part of our process to help define the project requirements in early stages. Now let's talk about the process to identify the project requirements at tender process. So then in tender process, we answer the pre-qualification questionnaire, PQQ, request the EIR and all appendices, request the organizational information requirements, request the asset information requirements that you spoke about it, identify the project standards if it is using ISO or or previous standard. Identify the FM data, and if it's required COBie or a different FM information management data. Check the security and health and safety requirements. Check if the CDE is provided and which stage. And one of the key points, engage with the clients to clarify the BIM documentation. Identify the activities that are out of our scope of works, and create the pre-BIM execution plan. So these are the typical process. But now, speaking with colleagues in the industry, you can see that the reality is not exactly perfect with all the documentation in hand, with all the information in hand to plan ahead the project deliverables. So then, speaking with my colleagues, this is the reality in many projects in the AC industry. So the pre-qualification questionnaire usually is available. The EIR is not existing or incomplete, so it's missing parts. The organizational information requirements normally is not existing. The request for asset information requirements is not existing, complete, or over spec in early stages. So sometimes this is defined better in later stages, but there are some issues if it's defined in later stages. So normally in all the specifications, it's clear to identify the standards, which recently, in past year, is mainly ISO 19650 and others as well. And for identify the FM data, if it requires COBie or different information management, asset information data. So it's very common to see that it's not existing, complete, or over spec. And check the security and health and safety information. Sometimes it's not existing or incomplete. And the CDE. Also, you can see many projects that actually is available in the construction stage, which creates another issue because then there is a risk of data loss if if we have access to CDE only construction stage, which usually is provided by the contractor. And these three other points are part of our internal process that you engage with the client to clarify the BIM documentation. So now, oh, sorry. Yeah. So now let's identify the project requirements for after the project award. So then basically it's this similar process. We engage with the clients, define the project requirements, and it's very important to meet the FM team to understand the process. Sometimes they don't have this information, so then I need to engage with the FM team to ask more information about the asset management and confirm the process. Also agree on the EIR and check if all the BIM documentation truly reflects the client needs. Check the standards and all the other process that is listed in this slide. So this is very important. What is still appear in our industry, speaking also with colleagues, is when we don't have any BIM requirements, or sometimes the BIM requirements is just BIM level 2. So if we have this process, so what we do? So we need to engage with the clients to define the BIM requirements. If there is no BIM requirements or EIR, we need to create the BP proposal for the BIM deliverables and get it. Is very important to get it approved. So if there is no BIM requirements, you identify and set up your approach on the BP. Create the post BP based on the ISO and meet with the FM team to understand if there is any requirements. Confirm the security and health safety requirements, and plan the information exchange with or without the CDE, and identify activities that are out of our scope of works. So this is the common workflow when we don't have any BIM requirements, or the only requirement is BIM level 2. Now let's talk about the CDE. Usually you can find two types of situation. The first is when the CD is not available in any stages, and when it's available only in the construction stage. In my view, one of the issues, I believe, is the cost of the CD is still very expensive for clients, and they are not providing CD in early stages. So, and it's good to understand when the CD is available, the work in progress area usually is saved in the private servers, and there are CD that allows work in progress to be saved in the cloud, but not all of them. And then when the CD is not available, each appointed party should maintain the work in progress, share the publish and the archive in the private servers. So, and it's very important also, regardless the CD solution, all parties should keep the backup and the records of all information. So this is one common issue that in early stages we don't have the CD available, but you need to keep exactly the same process of work in progress, shared and published and archived in our private servers. So now talk about the BIM implementation strategy. So let's see how. Yeah.
Fabio, sorry, we're close to finishing time.
Yeah, it's just 2 more slides.
Okay.
So then we have here just talk about the BIM implementation strategy, which is to identify the BIM requirements truly reflect the client's needs. We have the BIM documentation, and then from stage 3, the step 3, we start to plan the BIM execution plan with the end in use, and then after that, we start the model and the process. So now, just quickly, is the asset information requirements. So this is the expected information with the asset information requirements in the early stages, BIM models or in the community environment. And then when it comes to handover and use, we have FM digital system. But the reality is for many projects in the AC industry not the same. So then in early stages, we don't have the information requirements. The BIM models, drawings, and data is saved on private servers. Sometimes the client relies on the contractor to provide the commodity environment, so then the CD is available only in construction. And the FM analog system for managing operational implementation manuals are analog systems, so then there is a potential data loss on the end. And this is my last slide. The key points is the information at the right time is critical factor for success. Clients need to better understand their needs and capability. Clients to provide a full set of project requirements, appendices, and at the beginning of the project. Clients to define to check the information received, in all stages. And engagement with clients helps to convert strategic goals into realistic deliverables. And it's very important to check the BIM documentation truly reflects the client needs. Thank you very much for attending my presentation. I hope you enjoyed.
Thank you for that insightful presentation, Fabio. As said, we'll do a Q&A panel for the designers and contractors section at 12:55. The next session is with Adrian Shilliday of UKBIMA Alliance Scotland and Galliford Try, who's going to talk us through BIM from a Tier 1 contractor's perspective. Over to you, Adrian.
We can't hear you, Adrian. We can see your slides, but we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah, it swapped over to the wrong microphone. Thanks very much to everyone. Just before I start, Fabio and I have not seen each other's slides, so I will hopefully continue with some of the comments that Fabio has made. So my name is Adrian Shilliday, and I'm a technical director for Galliford Try and the co-chair for UKBIMA Alliance Scotland, along with Ryan Tennyson and Graham Stewart. As you can see on the screen, I am not just looking after BIM, and I'll talk about some of these issues during the presentation. So I'll also look after design management, information management, including our own common data environment, EDMS, also look after quality, and I have been a part of a number of BIM working groups, and I've been very lucky to have John Ford as part of my team, and I'll mention some of the work that he's been doing during the slides. In terms of following on from Fabio, very, very similar things that I have picked up on my slides, and hopefully be able to give a bit of a flavour as to how we can avoid them in future. So what issues do the tier ones all face? So as very similar to Fabio, we've got poorly advised clients who aren't given a true understanding of BIM, no EIRs or vague BIM requirements in the depths of the prelims. They're either incomplete or not project-specific EIRs, or we do get EIRs that just completely deviate from the standards, and that actually almost produced more of a risk for us to deliver. Same as Fabio has noted, they're overly complex, costly, and there are no real life cycle benefits to the client. We quite often find BIM documents contradict one another to other project requirements, and there's quite often no OIRs or AIRs to develop to inform the EIRs, and no understanding of life cycle or the facilities management software. Even just general briefing, what information does the client need to actually satisfy their brief and their requirements, and quite often poorly advised. And again, when we do get AIRs, they're either complex, ask for everything, or they just don't make sense. I think Fabio echoed that as well. Part two of these issues, there's no one appointed at a pre-contract stage to manage the BIM process, and that's a very big issue once it comes to the contractor. There's no BIM execution plan in place at these pre-contract stages, or there's a BIM execution plan that doesn't actually match the EIRs. We do quite often find that the task teams at pre-contract haven't been actually appointed to work to BIM standards, that work is missing from those scopes of services. The lead designer isn't coordinating or looking at 3D coordination, clash detection, and as Fabio noted, the current team haven't been using a common data environment and not applying naming standards. We too often see BIM protocols issued with conflicts with all the rest of the contract and the appointments, and I know that Simon and May talked about this earlier, and hopefully the new protocol will resolve those issues. We find incomplete, uncoordinated modelling and data that doesn't match tender stage, drawings and schedules not from the models, or teams are wanting to charge extra fees for delivering to BIM standards. And we do find, similar to Fabio's comments, the delivery of all the BIM requirements are passed to the tier ones. So I'm echoing comment from Duncan on Twitter, a tale of woe. Hopefully that does come across as a bit of a tale of woe, but actually I think we can deal with it. And some of the work that John has been doing in terms of understanding where do those deviations actually come from, what triggers it, how do we then avoid those issues going forward. So John wrote an article on BIM Plus in terms of the typical deviations at each of the stages where the regulations haven't been complied with, some of it down to lack of knowledge, some of it down to the time scale or fees, but we can see very clearly that there are lots of opportunities to deviate from the standards line, and we have to try and get better at how we do this. And in terms of how often does this happen, we've estimated probably over 80% of projects don't fully follow BIM standards. So from this presentation from BIM Show Live, John had picked up from the blue line, not sure how clear that is on your screens, the number of projects that have come in, and the yellow line represents where the true BIM processes have been followed. And I think we could obviously clearly see that needs a bit of work to help with it. So how do we resolve that? Spotting some of the tweaks. Yes, absolutely, client side, they need to be better informed of the overall BIM processes. We need to be better factoring in CAPEX and OPEX, soft landings, and where all of this data is going to go in the FM tools, better decisions on procurement routes and appointing the right team. And I know Emma and others have looked at integrated project insurance, etc. Task teams do need to read the standards and implement them within their businesses, as well as wider industry standards. So ISO 9001 is a big topic that I push. Section 8.3 is all about design, and it very much aligns with the ISO BIM standards as well. But we also need to get a better handle on why we're actually doing all of this. Why are we using these standards? There are wider risks across the business: time, cost, quality, compliance, health and safety, buildability. How do we use BIM standards to help with all of these? And look at the overall tasks, the roles, the responsibilities, and not just BIM. And that's where I see the rest of my role in the business. We do need to make it, avoid making it more complicated than it needs to be. And BIM needs to be aligned to the wider project delivery, not separated. And most of all, we do need to start applying some common sense to our projects. So where does a Tier 1 contractor fit in? What I've unashamedly done is stolen some of the good work that's been done on the guidance, looking at a typical project with a JCT or NEC design and build, and that could be within a framework, single or two-stage procurement process, aligning to the plan of work from BS 8536 or REBA's plan of work. And we're typically looking at tender documentation issued at the end of stage 3. And the anticipation is the contractor will be responsible for the management of the whole team, and that we will take on the role of the lead appointed party at contract award or at appointment, and that the team will be novated, and we will then supplement that with specialist supply chain. So we'll do a little bit of a mix and match of some of the terminology, post-contract, pre-contract, etc., just to put it into the context of what I want to cover today. So as Fabio noted, it's really important that we get the timelines correct. So you've got the client appointing party the whole way through all the stages, and that there is a pre-contract before the contractor comes on board, lead appointed party, and I'll come on to that a little bit more detail shortly. And that there are pre-contract appointed parties, the task teams, the designers, the specialist consultants, all doing their tasks before it passes over to the Tier 1 contractor, who will take on the role of the lead appointed party, and the novated teams that are supplemented with the supply chain. And I've also noted that there is quite often soft landings within that in-use period. I know a lot of public sector include that. It could be 3 to 5 years of in-use. Within the guidance, some fantastic information diagrams to help with making sure that everything is done at each of the stages. So from a pre-contract stage, there is a clear list of the tasks and responsibilities, the tender appointment of each of the different parties. Really recommend that you all read the guidance, understand how it fits into each of the stages. So that's looking at a pre-contract stage. And there is a whole series of activities that need to be done, from the appointing party, the lead appointed party, pre-contract, and the pre-contract appointed parties. And as Fabio picked up, all of these tasks do need to be done prior to the contractor appointment. That's to enable the most successful approach to BIM. And then looking at the Tier 1 being appointed, very similar process. There's a tender process that kicks in. There are post-contract tasks and responsibilities, very similar to before. The contractor is appointed as a lead appointed party, and then the same tasks then either need to be updated or they might be new, but there is a continuation, an understanding of all of the tasks that need to be done by each of the groups at each of the stages. So again, I'm not going to go through this in detail. You can download the guidance. And then in terms of what does the Tier 1 need to do once that's in place, many of us have got third-party certification or verification of our processes. And that involves looking at process maps, how we deal with it, guidance, forms, check sheets, execution plan templates, design responsibilities matrix, information release schedules, etc. And also, in some cases, we do need to help clients that were brought on at an early stage. So some have developed our own EIR templates based on our experience across a wide range of projects to assist clients in a more realistic way. And also, as Fabio noted, using a common data environment, EDMS, in terms of how those tools should be used. And we've shown just an example there of our ISO 19650 certification that myself and John got for the business last year. And these are just some snapshots of the types of things that many tier ones will have in place: process maps, documentation, and guidance to help deliver BIM projects in the role that we take on board. One of the key things that has been mentioned quite a few times, including through the BIM protocol, is making sure that the team are appointed and mobilised correctly. We need to make sure that that's picked up within the risk registers. We make sure the scopes of services are correct in innovation, making sure there's someone carrying out all of the information management tasks, making sure everybody's got the right capability, and making sure you actually get everyone into a room or a virtual room to kick off the project, make sure everybody understands their roles and responsibilities, the documentation's in place, and that the CDE exchange procedures are fully agreed. And that includes not just BIM tasks, but compliance, quality, and general approval, not just data and modelling. And also to confirm how we exchange with clients. Many don't have their own CDE or solution, and they're relying on the contractor. How do we exchange? How do we make that wider group understand how that information is going to be exchanged? As I mentioned earlier, my role doesn't just cover BIM, and the design responsibilities matrix also isn't just for BIM. It includes a wide range of other things for general design, coordination, buildability, safety and design, regulations compliance, very, very prominent at the moment with the Hackett report, performance requirements, etc., etc. And also understanding that not everything is currently modelled. So there's a lot of Twitter feed on that over the last week or so. So again, making sure that BIM is a part of the overall project. And again, MIDP is also an information release schedule. And I know that the guidance has been updated by John recently that looks at the concept. How do we actually ask for the right information? How is it set out? How is it delivered? How do we manage it going forward? So really key documents that need to be put together. Also, as Fabio noted, the CDE is absolutely essential. Have you agreed your workflows? Have you agreed the basics of your naming conventions? Does everybody understand it? And are we making sure that we're using it going forward? Bit of a screenshot there, just showing examples of classification that can be applied as metadata. How do we deal with all of those things on a day-to-day basis is absolutely critical as well. So as I said, BIM is just part of the wider project delivery. Look at the employer's requirements, the brief, regulations, Hackett report, industry standards, CIBSE, BISRIA, looking at CDM, product and project risk management, buildability, looking at interfaces, tolerances, deflection, and then looking at the real processes of handover, O&Ms, health and safety file, third-party certification, etc. All of those are enabled by BIM standards to help us deliver much better information. How do we manage? How do we deliver that evidence and those records of compliance? As part of my role, as I said, co-chair of BIM Alliance Scotland, obviously working quite a lot with the SFT, with Paul Dodds and Ryan Tennyson. They've got a fantastic resource of information through the Scottish Futures Trust. You can see their details on the screen there. I want to just very quickly just show an example project of what's happening through the Hub framework in Scotland. This is an example of a project that we delivered last year, high school in West Calder, very complex project. Design, build and operate. So we had an FM aspect to the project, and the procurement route was through the hub process. And very similar to the comments from Fabio, there was no client requirements from the client, so we were able to help them with that with our own documentation EIRs. We delivered that suite, worked with our own FM team, looked at the COBie requirements, which I'll come on to, and we made sure that the team all understood how they would get the benefits of all of this, and the workshops, making sure we had the right people in place. The documentation was all developed collaboratively, and also we made sure that the supply chain were engaged from the outset, that it's not just the consultants, but services, contractors, steelwork, lightweight framing, swimming pools, FF&E, all of those things do need to be factored at an early stage, and ideally that those contractors and specialists are brought on as early as possible. So as you can see, very, very complex building. All the FF&E was modelled by the supplier. MEP was modelled from outset by the subcontractor, so it was all fabrication ready. SFS, swimming pool, etc. were all modelled, all brought together. And as I mentioned earlier, looking at COBie, we quite often run away from it, but I think the key for us was making sure that it's broken down into simple checklists, understand the asset requirements, understand what's maintainable, what isn't, agree what data is required, and agree who provides it. When you break it down into those little chunks, it becomes much more manageable. And then we were able to take that data into our own FM tool, which is FSI, and you can see there from the snapshot how the data mapped into the system. It was done a little bit more manually, and I know I've tweeted earlier today about how these types of tools need to be better at consuming data, models, information from designers, so this process becomes a lot more straightforward, a lot more intuitive, and then we'll start to see the benefits coming into the BIM process. In terms of lessons learned, don't be afraid of COBie, understand how the FM systems work, don't ask for data that you don't need, keep the data requirements very, very simple and usable, make sure you agree all of the processes with the design team and the FM contractor to streamline the processes, early engagement with specialists, particularly MEP services because of the coordination requirements and the data. Do make sure you use a CDE for all information, and make sure you do carry out some really simple checks. You don't always need a specialist software, and I think that's something that we need to get across. Common sense, making it as simple as possible, then you're going to get a much wider engagement with the rest of the industry. So hopefully that gives a bit of a flavour of where BIM sits from a Tier 1 perspective. Very, very much echoed Fabio's previous presentation and the comments from others today in terms of how do we better apply the standards, how do we better educate teams, clients going forward. So thank you very much indeed. That was it from me.
Thank you very much for that, Adrian. A bit of a reality check of where we are as an industry. We're now going to have a panel Q&A session. If I can share my screen. There we go. So for those of you who are joining for this afternoon session, you're asking a similar question to what we got this morning. Can we get copies of the presentations? Those that have agreed to share them will be available on the Alliance website, and if you follow the Alliance YouTube channel, there will be a recording of this conference. So the first question, which has come from Bryn Mainwaring, both to Fabio and to you, Adrian. What do you do when either the design or contractor team is replaced from one end of project stage to the next? Do you go through the whole process of information management, procurement of EIR, BEP? for the work stage that you're at.
So is that where there's a whole new team, do you mean, Craig?
Yeah, that's the question that's come in. It's yeah, as if the whole, I assume that means that
Yeah, through
one team's
D&B.
taken it up to a
Yeah.
certain stage for planning, and then you take it on.
Yeah, so I think that's, again, looking at the different types of procurement. So I showed an example of where the team is novated, and you would go through a number of checks that their original appointments were correct, that when their teams are novated across, that all the gaps and all the scopes of services are in place. But I think where there's true D&B, where the tier one contractor is able to pull his whole team together, consultants and supply chain, you would do the same checks that they align with the original client's requirements if they are in place. And again, using the guidance documents that I snapshotted just to check that all of the tasks, they're all covered, all of the responsibilities are all covered by the new team, but also checking back, did the original team follow the process as well? I think Fabio hinted at that as well in his presentation. We need to be better at that whole pre-contract stage, rather than leaving it to a point where it becomes too late to fix the problems.
Okay, thanks.
Yes,
Fabio.
also agree with Adrian, and exactly the same process. If there is a new team, then you follow the same process to check the contractual agreement and understand what's going to be deliverable and the capability of each team. But it's exactly the same as we will do in the beginning of the project.
Okay, thank you for those responses. A question from Mark Turner. The lack of a CDE up to the end of stage 3 is a major problem on many projects. What would you say is the best route when a client does not have their own system and a contractor will likely be insisting on using theirs from stage 4?
Yeah, that's a very, very difficult question, and some of that is down to the lack of interoperability between the various systems as well. Consultants will quite often have an internal set of tools, and just sharing on those initial stages can sometimes be problematic, but they are getting better. But it's that whole exchange piece between all of the different tools. The concept of what it means to exchange between different tools needs to be better understood as well, particularly now with the increase of metadata requirements, as included in interoperability report. But I think clients, particularly if they're a large estate client, really need to look at investing in their own common data environment. I mentioned earlier about facilities management software, so database driven, but those clients also need somewhere to put all of their O&M manuals. Where have they put their project brief? How have they shared that across their own client-side teams? So I think very similar to some of the comments on Twitter, better advice on the client side to help with that they can have a CDE that smoothly integrates with any others, including the contractors, and then into the operational side, EDMS, CDE, tools.
Thanks, Adrian. So I've got a question for Fabio now. Do you have experience with non-novation projects? Would you say that there's a better continuity of digital information, but also team motivation for non-novated projects?
Yes, which I have experience in. I have also experience in both systems. And well, first talk about the motivation. I think in terms of motivation, I believe there is no difference, because what makes people excited is about the project, is the project itself. So I don't think so there is difference on both systems. And you talk about the information, so it really depends how the information is managed. So in my view, the best situation is when the client manages the CDE, so they have the ownership of the CDE, so the information is in a single place across all the stages. So this is the ideal situation. And as Adrian said, also becomes an issue if we need to transfer information from one CDE to another CDE. for sure it will be data loss.
I think on the novation piece as well, if it's not novated proper D&B, the contractor probably picking his specialist subcontractors, particularly building services, to make sure that that fabrication ready, they were not abortive design at time, bringing all of that together. So it enables the contractor to bring those specialists on board earlier if there is true D&B, but that's down to the procurement route. But at the end of the day, the responsibilities, the information, the data is exactly the same requirements. It's the responsibility of who delivers it that simply changes with the procurement route. And I think that whole issue of procurement roles and responsibilities, the legal side, just needs to be so much better understood and a much more collaborative approach from the outset.
Okay, thanks both of you, and thank you to both of you for great presentations from the design and contractors world of BIM. There are quite a few questions still here, and I'm conscious of time that we're creeping into the next slot. So what we'll do is all the questions will be answered. We'll take these questions and give them to the panelists, and an answer will come back out to you.
Yeah, okay, no, that's great. Thank you very much indeed.